The JonBenét Ramsey ransom note is the strange beating heart of the case. It's the first thing we encounter. It's what set the entire investigation in motion, framing the crime as a kidnapping for a full 8 hours before her body was found. The note is long, it's rambling, it's full of bizarre phrases and a mix of calm instructions and theatrical threats. And the handwriting itself is a mess. It's a scrawling, slightly unsteady script that has led many to ask a simple question: could a child have written it? It's an understandable question. At first glance, the writing doesn't look like a typical adult's polished cursive or neat print. It's erratic. Letters vary in size and shape. The lines aren't perfectly straight. It seems juvenile. This has fueled theories over the years. Some have suggested that maybe Burke Ramsey, who was 9 at the time, was involved and was forced to write the note. Others have even floated the idea that JonBenét herself, a 6-year-old, could have written parts of it before she was killed, perhaps as some kind of game that went horribly wrong. These theories, however, fall apart when you look closer. They mistake a lack of neatness for a lack of skill. They confuse a disguised hand with a developing one. Handwriting analysis is not about whether the writing is pretty. It's about identifying deep-seated, unconscious habits. It's about the mechanics of how a person forms letters, spaces words, and moves a pen across paper. And when experts in this field look at the JonBenét ransom note, they don't see a child. They see an adult trying very hard to look like someone else and possibly trying to look unskilled. The evidence for this is layered and points overwhelmingly in one direction. To understand why, you first have to understand what handwriting experts look for. It's not just about comparing a T in the note to in a suspect's writing sample. It's about a whole collection of characteristics. Think of it like a face. You don't recognize someone just by their nose. You recognize them by the combination of their nose, their eyes, their mouth, the shape of their face, all working together. For handwriting is the same. Experts look at the size and proportion of letters, the slant of the writing, the pressure of the pen on the paper, and the spacing between letters and words. They look at how letters are connected, the baseline of the writing, does it go uphill, downhill, or stay straight, and individual quirky letter formations that are as unique as a fingerprint. A child's handwriting has specific qualities. It's often large and wobbly because they are still developing fine motor skills. They are consciously thinking about how to form each letter based on what they were taught in school. This is called copybook style. There's a lack of fluency and rhythm. An educated adult, on the other hand, writes without thinking about the letters. The process is automatic, grooved into the brain over decades of practice. Their writing has a natural flow and internal consistency even when it's messy. The ransom note does not show the signs of a child's developing hand. Instead, it shows signs of a mature, skilled hand being deliberately distorted. This is a crucial distinction. A child's writing is naturally inconsistent. The ransom note's writing is artificially inconsistent. The author seems to be trying on different styles, sometimes within the same sentence. For example, the lowercase letter appears in 2 different forms throughout the note: the common one-stroke circle and stick-up, and the 2-stroke printed, that you see in books. The author switches between them. This is not typical of a child. It's a sign of someone consciously trying to alter their natural style. Another major red flag for experts is the slow, deliberate nature of the writing. It looks like it was written very carefully, not with the natural speed of a practiced writer. The pen pressure is often heavy and constant, suggesting the writer was drawing the letters rather than writing them. When you write naturally, the pressure changes. It's lighter on upstrokes and heavier on downstrokes. This gives the writing a certain rhythm. That rhythm is largely absent in the ransom note. This labored quality is a classic sign of disguise. The author was thinking about every single letter they put down on the page. So if it wasn't a child, who was it? Investigators collected handwriting samples, called exemplars, from everyone who could have been involved. This included John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, their friends, and even their housekeeper. The process was simple. Compare the known natural handwriting of a person to the disguised, anonymous writing in the note. John Ramsey was quickly and confidently eliminated as the author by most experts. His handwriting habits were just too different. The same went for their friends and staff. But when they got to Patsy Ramsey, the similarities began to pile up. It wasn't a perfect match on the surface. Of course not. The author of the note was trying to hide their identity. But the art of handwriting analysis is finding the habits that leak through the disguise. No matter how hard you try to change your writing, your subconscious habits, the ones you don't even know you have, tend to pop up. And Patsy Ramsey's habits seem to be all over that note. Let's break down some of the specific similarities that numerous leading document examiners have pointed out over the years. These are not just 1 or 2 odd coincidences, they are a collection of dozens of shared unique characteristics. First, There are the individual letter formations. The note contains an unusual 4-stroke lowercase in the word wand. It's formed almost like a circle with a plus sign on top. This is not a standard letter. It's a personal quirk. Patsy Ramsey was found to use the same bizarre formation in her own writing. The lowercase start is another point of connection. In the note, the kid is often crossed very high, almost at the very top of the letter's stem. This was a consistent habit in Patsy's writing. Look at the lowercase did. In the ransom note, the often has a looped stem. Thus, Patsy Ramsey frequently wrote hers with a similar loop. The way the author wrote the letters O and is also telling. They often left a small gap at the top where the circle should close. Patsy's writing samples show the same tendency. Even the way punctuation was used provided clues. The note uses exclamation points that are made with a perfect circle for the dot, rather than a quick jab. This was a stylistic flair that Patsy also used. Beyond individual letters, there's the use of acronyms. The note is signed PC, which stands for Victory, Swift, Bold, Terrible, Courageous. The use of acronyms was something Patsy was known for. Friends reported she would sign cards and letters with acronyms like PLA. The note has indentations and a general layout that mirrored formats Patsy had used in other letters and notes she had written. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence came from the practice note. Investigators found a draft of the ransom note written on the same pad. It starts with Mr. and Mrs. R. Seeing a draft shows the author working things out. When you put all these small pieces together, a picture starts to form. You have dozens of unique letter formations, punctuation habits, spacing quirks, and formatting choices that are present in both the ransom note and Patsy Ramsey's known writing samples. A single match could be a coincidence. 2 or 3 could be interesting. But when you have 20, 30, or even more points of similarity, as many experts found, coincidence becomes a very unlikely explanation. The argument that Patsy wrote the note is also strengthened by the signs of disguise. The note was written with the non-dominant hand. At least that's what many experts believe. Patsy was right-handed. The note has the telltale signs of left-handed writing by a right-handed person, a deliberate slowness, a certain shakiness, and inconsistent letter slants. This would be a very logical way to try and hide your identity. You know your right-handed writing is recognizable, so you switch hands. But while you can change the hand you write with, you can't so easily change the letter formations stored in your brain. Your brain still tells your left hand to make a hot with a high crossbar, or to leave the top of the O open. The fundamental habits leak through. This is why the child wrote it. Theory is so weak in comparison. A child isn't disguising anything, they are just writing. Their work lacks the internal conflict seen in the ransom note, the battle between the author's natural, fluid habits and their conscious, deliberate attempt to create a forgery. The note is a performance. It's an act of deception, and the handwriting itself shows the strain of that act. The content of the note also points away from a child and away from an outside intruder. The vocabulary is complex. It uses words like attache, deviation, and refers to a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. This is not the language of a 9-year-old boy. It's also not the typical language of a kidnapper. Real ransom notes are usually short, direct, and to the point. They give instructions. They don't quote movies like Dirty Harry, listen carefully, and Speed, do not try to grow a brain. The note is overly dramatic and reads like a script. The ransom amount itself is another huge clue. The author demanded $118,000. Why such a specific and relatively small number for a wealthy family? It turned out to be almost the exact amount of a bonus John Ramsey had recently received from his company. A real kidnapper from a foreign faction would have no way of knowing the specific personal financial detail, but someone inside the house would. And then there's the most damning physical evidence of all the note was written in the house. The paper came from a legal pad found in the kitchen. The Sharpie pen used to write it was also from the house, found in a pen cup with other pens. The logistics of an intruder theory become almost impossible. An intruder would have to break into the house, find a pen and paper, sit down somewhere for an estimated 20 to 30 minutes to compose this incredibly long note, commit the crime, and then leave the note behind, all without waking anyone up. It makes no sense. A prepared kidnapper would bring their own note, or at the very least, they would not spend so much time inside the victim's home writing one. The note feels staged. It feels like part of an effort to create a fictional narrative to cover up what really happened. When you combine the physical evidence, the paper and pen, the linguistic evidence the movie quotes, the specific ransom amount, and the handwriting evidence, the case against an outside intruder crumbles. The same evidence also dismantles the theory that a child wrote the note. The letter formations show a mature hand. The vocabulary and sentence structure are adult. The note's very existence inside the house points to an author who was already there. So, we circle back to Patsy Ramsey. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation's top document examiner, Chet Ubowski, concluded that he believed Patsy wrote the note. He said there were too many similarities to be a coincidence. Other respected experts hired by the prosecution, like Richard Dusak and Leonard Specken, agreed. They all saw the same patterns, the shared letter formations, the similar use of space, and the evidence of a deliberate attempt to disguise natural handwriting. The Ramsey family's own hired experts, of course, disagreed. They argued that the similarities were not significant enough and that Patsy Ramsey could be excluded. This is common in high-profile cases. You can often find an expert to support whichever side you're on. But the sheer number of independent experts who have pointed the finger at Patsy is significant. They weren't all working together. They were all looking at the same evidence and coming to the same conclusion based on the principles of their field. They saw the ahs, the don'ts, the acronyms, and the overall theatricality of the document, and they saw Patsy Ramsey's writing style leaking through the disguise. It's important to be clear. The handwriting analysis does not prove that Patsy Ramsey killed her daughter. It doesn't tell us what happened in the basement. It doesn't explain the garrote or the head wound. What it does do is place her at the scene of the staging. It makes her the author of the fictional kidnapping plot. It suggests she was an active participant in creating a cover story in the immediate aftermath of her daughter's death. This, in itself, is an act of deception that points toward guilt. The ransom note is a psychological document as much as a forensic one. The person who wrote it was trying to project an image. They wanted to sound like a dangerous, professional, foreign kidnapper. But they failed. Their own personality, their own habits, and their own amateurish idea of what a kidnapper sounds like kept breaking through. They tried to sound threatening but ended up sounding theatrical. They tried to disguise their hand, but their own unique quirks were embedded in nearly every line. So, no. A child did not write the JonBenét ransom note. The complexity of the writing, the signs of deliberate disguise, and the mature vocabulary all point to an adult. The question then becomes, which adult? When you follow the trail of evidence, the pen, the paper, the specific knowledge, and the dozens of handwriting characteristics that trail leads directly to Patsy Ramsey. It is the single most powerful piece of evidence in the entire case, a 2.5-page confession not to murder, but to a cover-up. The hand that wrote the note may have been shaky in disguise, but the mind behind it was educated, familiar, and, according to a strong consensus of experts, belonged to JonBenét's mother. The note wasn't a child's scrawl, it was a desperate, calculated act of misdirection written by a parent in the middle of an unthinkable nightmare.